Welcome back, friends. It's good to be together again as we begin a new abbreviated season of podcasting for St. James and anybody that's listening. For this season of Lent, Pastor Dan and I are going to be talking about the way the gospel of Jesus Christ makes sense of life and how it is the lens through which we see things. And we are using a book by N.T. Wright, New Testament scholar and bishop of the Anglican Church. And the book is Broken Signposts. Wright's primary image for this is to say that we have a sense that life should make sense, but it doesn't seem to make sense. That we have certain longings that are pointed to, certain ways that things should be, and yet we're not quite there. And Wright's argument is that it is the gospel that makes it make sense. He says, my main argument in this book is that when we understand the Christian message, we will see that it does indeed make sense of our world, because it helps us both to understand the world the way it is and to be able to contribute fresh sense through our own lives. It's that understanding that in the passion of Jesus, in the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus, we begin to understand the longings that we have and the way that it can make sense for us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and definitely indeed. And, throughout this time together, in these signposts, when he talks about it, he goes over 7 of them, some which will be very relative to things that are going on in our world today. In fact, the first one, which will be coming up, is on justice, and then there's love and spirituality, beauty, freedom, truth, and power. So really, you could see the first and the last. When I'm going through these, and I'm thinking of everything that's going on in our world, of the justice and the power and all the stuff that's going on. I was like, so we're going to be beginning and ending with really things that are very prevalent, things that are going on, and not that the others are not, but they're just thinking of the topics of what's there.
Absolutely,
that's part of the thing. And I think one of the things that I felt with this, when he said in the beginning, he says we know it ought to make sense, but we can't make it do so. And when we're thinking about this and how, even how we regularly experience the world, and you would think as we regularly, we would think things would make sense, but sometimes it doesn't always. And like one of the things he says on page 2 says, we all know that justice matters, but even in the best systems, mistakes are made. Innocent people are convicted, criminals get away with it, and we start to distrust judges, juries, and the whole system. But then, there's others too, as you go through in these signposts, and that's part of what he's saying. The signposts are supposed to be something like whole and good, but in his essence to the book is it's broken, because there's more injustice than there is justice, and in those kind of situations like that. And so it's a matter of how do we take the signposts that are broken and make them whole again.
Exactly. And I think, that for me, there are 2 things that really make this appealing for us as a point of reflection for this season of Lent. Mm-hmm. First of all, this notion of signposts. My phrasing would be different than signposts. I think they are longings.
Yeah.
I think that every one of us longs for a world of justice and love and spirituality and truth and beauty and power, and I missed one. Freedom.
Yeah.
And we know that ought to be in our lives and in our world. And there's just this deep longing. And I think that the season of Lent is fundamentally about owning our longing and seeing how it is met in the gospel.
Yeah.
I'm reminded of the famous phrase from Augustine at the beginning of the Confessions: "Our hearts are restless until they rest in you." And I think that's an important piece of this sense of signposts that Wright is pointing to. And the second thing that really appeals to me in this, for this season of time, is that Wright reminds us that every one of these signposts, every one of these longings, is both personal and communal.
Yeah.
And I do think that there is a real need for us as a Christian community to bring together our individual sense of God and our community life.
In the sense, like some of the things that it's talked about is on page 7 in my book. It says, like, they really do appear to hold the key to making sense of our world, to understanding what it means to be human, to what it means for us human beings to flourish and thrive. But yet, then this is the part that every philosophy, every religion, every political system, every society holds by implication some kind of view. And then he says, I have in mind, even, in fact, every single child, woman, and man has a view, though many people just take them for granted until something goes wrong, and then suddenly this relevant signpost comes back again in the form of a challenge and a question or a puzzle. And I think that's part of the things that in our lives, we don't always think of these things as challenges or questions or puzzles, things to do, or something happens, we think, oh, we can fix it, or we'll get somebody to do it. But then when it doesn't get fixed, or when, in this case, in our first chapter, when injustices continue to occur, even from way back when to now. I mean, part of this is, as we go along, we'll notice that he focuses on the Gospel of John as we're going through this. And so, and when you see this, and this was like for me, just in reading up to this point, was being able to see and relate how he uses the Gospels to even things that are going on today, and in sense, and like the comparisons, and using these signposts to see that even back then Jesus faced the injustices and all these things. He had the relationships, he had all these signposts, but yet they weren't always they were broken then as well as they're broken now.
Exactly. Well, and I think that's, I mean, at some level, that's the point to the passion. That's the point to the cross.
Yeah, exactly.
Is that Jesus allowed the brokenness of the world to, in some sense, overwhelm him. And that's where we see salvation, is in the Almighty taking on God's self, the brokenness of each of these signposts, so that then they can be set right.
Yes. Yeah.
And they can make sense. At one point, Wright talks about them as being something like security systems, and that life will only make sense when all 7 of the tumblers for the key are put in place, and then we can begin to experience life as it is and as it can be. I find this notion again of deep longing being met in the person of Jesus Christ and in the passion of Jesus
Yeah.
to be a central place for us to reflect as we move forward.
Absolutely.
Well, we do hope that you all will continue to join us for these times together as we reflect our way through. Today was just about introducing the general theme and the concept of where we are going. As Pastor Dan mentioned, next week we'll be talking about the signpost of justice in particular. And I do want to remind everybody that for the weekend of the 21st and 22nd, the Reverend Dr. Joey Shelton will be with us on Saturday, the 21st, from 3 to 5. Joey will be presenting when the church gets it wrong, and the way that what is labeled as Christian nationalism is to some extent neither. And that we need to hold on to the central truths of our faith, and we need to stand up for the gospel as we know it. He will be preaching on the 22nd around this theme of justice. And then we will move forward with the other 7 as we move through the season of Lent.